tankers, welcome back to my videos. I am Droodles Blitz, and today I'm going over the Object 252U. This tank has just hit the store for 12,500 gold, and I'm just going to be talking about it. Normally I go over the statistics and the armor profile, however I already made a video on this vehicle, and if you'd like to see it, I'll have it in the description down below, and I talk about all the statistics and, my opinion on it, but today I'm going to get a little more in-depth into my overall standpoint of this tank and whether or not it's worth it. And if you guys were looking forward to seeing this tank hit the store again because you were thinking it's overpowered and you wanted to pick it up, I really hate to say it, but I don't think it's as overpowered as people think it is. And I know most of you guys have been waiting for this tank to come out because you've been thinking, oh my god, this tank's really overpowered. I wish I got it when it first came out. All the YouTubers are saying it's overpowered. However, I have to disagree with that, and I've got a couple reasons. If you guys disagree with me, please let me know in the comments down below. Hit down the downvote if you want to. It really doesn't matter that much. Just let me know your opinions on the vehicle as well, because I really want to, understand all the points of view on this vehicle. But from my standpoint, what I've been thinking is, first of all, this tank has the worst damage per minute in the game for any type of Russian heavy. I mean for tier 8, by the way, not tier 9 or 10. But it has the worst Russian damage per minute heavy tank in the game, the same as like the Chinese knockoffs. It's sitting at less than 2,000, and that's with running gun rammer. I have to run gun rammer on this vehicle because the damage per minute is that bad. I like to run calibrated, but it's just unfortunate how bad the damage per minute is. Now, not to mention that damage per minute's so bad, you'd think, well, it's got a bigger alpha, so it sort of, evens out the perspective on it. However, is 20 more damage really that much a bigger alpha? If you were to shoot somebody for 20 more damage, I could ram somebody for 20 more damage in a T49 if I really wanted to. There's really 20 more alpha damage isn't really mean much, and when I run this vehicle, it does like to low roll half the time. You can see there, that's a low roll, 394, that's below average. So, to be honest, it just rolls like any other Russian vehicle. It's only about 10% higher. Not to mention, this tank isn't crazy quick. It's got, a top speed of 35, so it is decently mobile, and its traverse speed is pretty good. However, there is one thing I wanted to say about it, and the reason I just hate to say this vehicle's not worth the price tag, even though it's been cheaper than it was last time it was in the store, is because the IS-5. And you may be thinking, well, what does the IS-5 have to do with this tank? They're completely different. But that is why I think the IS-5 wins, because, first of all, this tank is 12,500 gold. And how much does an IS-5 cost? It costs 1,500. Now, the more and more you think about it, the IS-5, not only is it cheaper, it's quicker. It has a top speed of 40 kilometers per hour, and when I run the engine boost, I can probably get up to 42, 43, which is already a very quick tank. You're able to keep up with most mediums. It's got a better acceleration than the OBJ 252U, and not to mention, the gun characteristics are better. The aiming time is better, the shell velocity is better, it shoots heat rounds, which means it has more penetration. Now you could argue that APCR has a better chance of penetrating through tracks of like a tier 9, heavy tank or something. However, you can also argue that APCR shells lose penetration over distance compared to where heat shells do not, and heat shells get a greater amount of penetration over APCR. And you can see we have done pretty good in this game, but first of all, I was camping, which means that really this doesn't mean anything in an actual battle where you'd be fighting heavies. And I'll show you a better battle for that next. But, the armor on this tank is good, but it's only good if you're up against players that don't know how to take it out. The lower plate on this vehicle, let me just go out of the garage real quick and bring it up. The lower plate on this vehicle is huge. Look at the size of it. That whole lower plate's only sitting around 180. Even if you angle it like that, that's still probably 200, 220 thick, which means that most tier 8s will still have enough penetration to go through that. And that is one of the weaknesses already, is that lower plate is just such a weak spot. Second of all, the top of the tank, you can see those cupolas sticking up. Those are big weak spots. You can easily shoot that when the tank is face-hugging you, and The main advantage of this tank you'd think would be face-hugging, because you hide that big lower plate and you get this ridiculously overpowered upper plate and this ridiculously hard to hit turret. But any vehicle that's the same height as you, they can aim right at the roof of that vehicle and shoot those two things sticking up at the top. Boom, it penetrates every time. Now if you compare the armor profile of this tank to an IS-5, you can see that the IS-5 is quite a little bit different angled here. The lower plate is definitely smaller than the OBJs, you can see that. Not only is the lower plate smaller, but the side armor is actually better in the IS-5 because it's more troll at bouncing. The turret armor is more reliable on the front, and you can only hit this cupola here. This one doesn't actually count as armor where the gun port is. It's only the one to the right, which means that also it's harder to penetrate this vehicle. It has better damage per minute. It has better pretty much everything gun-wise. It's just a much better vehicle in my opinion. But let me get stuck into the second replay so I can tell you guys a little bit more about them. Now, to be honest, the main reason also why I'm saying don't buy this tank is just because it's still overpriced in my opinion. You know, 12,500 gold. Here's how you want to think of the vehicles Wargaming sells. You have to remember Wargaming is a company, and when their prices on tanks increase or decrease, it means that their tanks are doing well or not well. When the WZ-120 first came out, it came out for, I think it was $44 I bought it for. And then the WZ-120 came out for $50. I think they only had it for 2 days in the store and they took it out because they actually didn't want people to be running around because they were that overpowered. And they probably sold so many they just thought it was not good for the game and they didn't want to have another Kenyatta running around at tier 8. Well, this vehicle here, if it was so overpowered, they would not have brought it back cheaper. And this is quite a bit cheaper, coming with all of the equipment, a camouflage. It seems a little too good to be true if you think about it. And to be honest, that's really what I think the thing about the tank is that people think that it's this overpowered beast, but it really isn't. So I'm warning you guys, and I'm cautioning you, really, if you have the IS-5 and you like the IS-5, this might be a fun little tank to pick up. But if you like the IS-5 because of its speed and the gun it has, I really wouldn't say pick this vehicle up if you want to grind credits or anything like that, because the T-34 is a much better credit grinder than this tank. It's, I think it earns 20-30% more. Just look at the size of that aiming circle. I have to wait and wait and wait, and it barely even aimed in. That was just a very lucky shot. That could have easily as well missed. So you have to be very careful on that. And most people, by the way, that run this vehicle have to be careful on their ammunition loadout, because when you're running APCR and AP, some people like to carry a lot more APCR than their AP rounds if they're new to the game. Well, this tank doesn't have spectacular APCR penetration, only sitting around 260, which means that if you have a T95 or a T28, or any really tough vehicle, you're not going to be able to penetrate it. And unlike the normal IS-6 or the WZ-112-2, they've got that heat rounds that do almost 300 millimeters of penetration. The 260 just isn't going to cut it. Not to mention APCR has shell normalization angles, which is a whole different topic I will get into in the future. But really, it's just this whole combination of characteristics and aspects that make this vehicle not so good. You can see the size of that lower plate is huge when you aim at it, and even with this terrible aiming time and dispersion, you can shoot right down there. You can also see that if I were to shoot him in the side of the track over where the aimer's pointing there, it would also have penetrated because all of that spot there is gray. So through that front track wheel would have damaged that tank as well. You can see up to the top of the tank, the cupolas. You can see that is the weak spot I was talking about. When you are face hugging the tank, those make it a really big weak spot, and it's quite unfortunate because I really wish it was just a little bit better at being like an IS-7. That's what I thought this tank would be like, a Russian, just a full-out Russian heavy where you can run it aggressively, push it right up, and fight the enemies. Now, I will say one thing this tank is great at, and that is bouncing shots on the side armor. It is a beast at that. It's got one of the thickest sides, I'd have to say, in the game. But again, Look at the front of that tank. It is so weak, and that is just such a big issue. And you can see that the enemy player just doesn't know how to run this vehicle, and because of that, he thought, oh, it must be overpowered. You know, Meadsy made a video on it. He says it's really good. Or, you know, anybody like that big YouTuber makes a video on it. Bushka makes a video on it saying it's really good. You saw how easily I took him out, and he wasn't a good player, and the reason he bought it is because he had false information, probably buying the vehicle thinking it was going to be this great tank. Personally, I think that the IS-6 is better than this tank. I think the IS-5 is better. I think there are a lot of vehicles better than it. Not to mention, this tank's just not enjoyable to run. It's got that terrible accuracy I told you about, and what that means is that you're going to be frustrated when you miss your shots. And it's got that awful damage per minute as well mixed in with that, which means that if your team's being pushed on, you're really not going to be able to support them that much. You might be able to bounce a couple shots, but you know, your damage per minute's not going to save your team if they're pushing on you. You want a tank that can output a little bit more damage per minute. I know that an IS-5 sitting around a 12-second reload, I think you can actually get it down to 11 seconds. This is sitting at 14. That's a 3-second reload difference. It's really quite a big difference. And the only thing that would make this tank overpowered is when you're playing against players that don't know what they're doing. Now, I'm not saying don't buy this vehicle. I think it's still a very good vehicle. I think it is on the verge of being overpowered, but I just don't think it checks off all the boxes to outperform an IS-5 in a good player's hands. You can see 70,000 credits, an IS-5 would have earned just as many. But really, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you didn't like it, please let me know in the comments down below what your opinion on the OBJ252U is. But personally, I say stick with the IS-5, or you know, get the IS-3 Defender. Something like this is just way better. And I'll make sure to keep you guys posted on overpowered tanks to keep an eye out in the store. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys did enjoy and keep up with my videos.